I've done nothing wrong, Dominic states, Harvard ring glinting in the sunlight. They never do, Briggs sneers, cranking the handcuffs tighter. Your kind always has excuses. Officer Reynolds dumps Dominic's belongings onto the hood wallet, keys, phone. The leather wallet falls open, exposing a partial government ID card with an official seal. What would you do if you were wrongfully detained in public? Comment below. That government ID contains information that will make these officers regret today. 15 minutes earlier, Dominic browses Italian leather shoes in an exclusive men's boutique. His weekend attire, premium jeans, and a plain black t-shirt speaks of understated wealth. The store assistant hovers nearby, eyes tracking Dominic's every movement instead of offering assistance. Outside, officers Briggs and Reynolds cruise past in their patrol car. Briggs spots Dominic through the store window and nudges his partner. That guy looks out of place, Briggs says, jutting his chin toward the shop. Reynolds checks his watch. We're due for a break. This won't take long. Briggs pulls the car to the curb, already reaching for his door handle. Inside, Dominic selects a pair of handcrafted loafers and approaches the counter. The nervous attendant fumbles with the register, fingers trembling. When Dominic reaches for his wallet, the attendant flinches and presses the silent alarm button hidden beneath the counter. Dominic notices the motion but remains silent. He completes his purchase with a platinum card, signs the receipt with precise strokes. As he exits with his shopping bag, store security follows at a calculated distance. Officers Briggs and Reynolds approach from across the street, hands resting on their holsters. "Sir, we need a word," Briggs calls out, voice carrying unnecessary volume. Dominic stops, shoulders squared. "Is there a problem, officers?" "We received a report of suspicious activity in the area," Reynolds says, eyeing Dominic's shopping bag with exaggerated interest. "I just made a purchase." Dominic holds up his bag, offering the receipt tucked inside. "Everything's documented." Briggs ignores the receipt. "ID now." Dominic reaches slowly for his back pocket. "May I ask why I'm being stopped?" "Because we said so," Briggs snaps, hand shifting to his taser. "That's reason enough." Something in Dominic's demeanor suggests he's faced this treatment before and knows exactly what to do. "I'm reaching for my wallet," Dominic states clearly, movements deliberate and measured. Officer Briggs snatches the wallet before Dominic can open it. "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" "Shopping." Dominic maintains unwavering eye contact. "I live 6 blocks from here." Reynolds flips through the wallet, skipping past the driver's license, focusing instead on the credit cards. "Platinum Amex? Sure these are yours?" The store attendant emerges, pointing with unconcealed accusation. "That's him! He was acting strange, looking at things he couldn't afford." Dominic's jaw tightens slightly. "I just spent $200 in your store." "Anyone can steal a credit card," Briggs declares, voice rising to attract attention. "Turn around, hands behind your back." "On what charge?" Dominic asks, tone even but firm. "Resisting an officer," Briggs responds, grabbing Dominic's arm with unnecessary force. Dominic doesn't resist, but doesn't comply either. "I haven't resisted anything." Reynolds steps closer, invading Dominic's personal space. "You're about to." A small crowd forms, phones recording the confrontation. An older white woman speaks up from behind her shopping bags. "He wasn't doing anything wrong. I saw him shopping." Briggs ignores her completely. "Last chance. Turn around." Dominic slowly turns, hands raised slightly. "I'm cooperating, but this is unlawful detention." "Save it for the judge," Reynolds says, roughly grabbing Dominic's wrists. The crowd grows larger. Someone shouts, "This is wrong!" Briggs faces the crowd, hand resting on his holster. "Back up! Police business!" Dominic's eyes scan the faces in the crowd, landing on a young woman recording with her phone. Their eyes meet briefly. He gives her an almost imperceptible nod. The woman with the phone understands something the officers don't this moment was meant to be documented. The officers force Dominic to spread his legs, conducting an unnecessarily thorough pat-down. Briggs runs his hands along Dominic's sides with exaggerated slowness, putting on a show for the growing audience. "Stand still!" Briggs barks, though Dominic hasn't moved. Briggs empties Dominic's pockets onto the patrol car's hood keys, phone, receipts, and a small leather notebook scatter across the metal surface. He picks up the notebook, flipping through its pages with theatrical suspicion. "What's this?" Briggs waves the notebook. "Got your drug deals in here?" "Those are notes from a legal proceeding," Dominic says calmly. Reynolds laughs. "Sure they are. Everyone's a lawyer when they get cuffed." Nearby, the young woman Dominic noticed continues recording, her phone positioned for the best angle. She moves closer, capturing the officers' faces and badge numbers with deliberate precision. Briggs spots her. "You need to step back, ma'am." "I'm on public property," she replies without lowering her phone. "I'm allowed to record police officers performing their duties." Dominic remains silent, his expression neutral but watchful. His eyes communicate a different story, one of calculation, not fear. "We've got a smartass here," Reynolds says, tightening the cuffs another notch. "Maybe you two know each other?" "Never seen her before," Dominic answers truthfully. The officers force Dominic to sit on the curb, hands cuffed painfully behind him. The position forces his spine to curve awkwardly, a deliberately humiliating posture. Passers-by slow down, adding to the spectators. "Call it in," Briggs tells Reynolds. "Let's see if there are any warrants." Reynolds speaks into his radio, providing Dominic's name from his license. The store attendant approaches, gaining confidence from the officer's actions. "He might have accomplices. There was another black man in the store earlier." Dominic's eyebrow raises slightly. "So that's what this is about." "Shut up," Briggs orders. "You don't get to talk now." The woman recording steps even closer. "I'm sending this to local news stations. Badge numbers clearly visible." Reynolds turns toward her, hand dropping to his belt. "Back up or you're next." Dominic speaks quietly but firmly. "Officer, threatening a citizen for lawfully recording is a violation of established case law." "Look at the lawyer here," Briggs mocks, but his confidence wavers slightly. Dominic gazes steadily at the gathering crowd, eyes communicating something beyond words. Despite the cuffs cutting into his wrists and the uncomfortable position, his shoulders remain straight, his dignity intact. Dominic's phone, now lying on the patrol car hood, begins vibrating with an incoming call from someone important. Reynolds steps away to run Dominic's information, speaking quietly into his radio. Briggs stands guard, occasionally glancing nervously at the growing crowd. The young woman recording approaches another bystander, whispers something, and gestures subtly toward Dominic's phone on the hood. The bystander nods, understanding the unspoken plan. Dominic keeps his gaze level, focusing on his breathing. His mind methodically catalogs each procedural violation while his face reveals nothing. Years of legal training transform this humiliation into mental case notes. When Briggs turns to address another onlooker, the bystander casually passes by the patrol car. In one fluid motion, they palm Dominic's phone and slip around the corner. They examine the phone, no password protection, seemingly left accessible on purpose. The recent calls list contains only one name: Anthony. Without hesitation, they tap the contact. Across town, an elegant Justice Department conference room buzzes with activity. A distinguished black man in his 50s, Anthony Taylor, presides at the head of a table surrounded by senior officials. "We need to wrap this up," Anthony says, checking his watch. "My brother and I have dinner plans." His phone buzzes. He frowns at the unknown number but answers. "Attorney General Taylor." The bystander speaks urgently, explaining the situation unfolding on the street. Anthony's expression hardens into stone. "Where exactly?" he asks, signaling to his aides. "Keep the line open, don't interfere, but keep recording everything." Back at the scene, Reynolds returns to Briggs, confusion evident in his furrowed brow. Dispatch is acting weird. They're asking us to verify identity again. Briggs scoffs. What's to verify? Run it as suspected theft. They're saying to hold off on charges. Reynolds lowers his voice. Something about the address coming back unusual. Dominic remains silent, but a barely perceptible smile touches his lips. The woman who was recording approaches the officers with measured confidence. Excuse me, officers. I'm a law student at Georgetown. You should know there are now 14 people recording this incident and 3 live streams active. Briggs turns, anger flashing across his face. This doesn't concern you. Public accountability always concerns citizens, she replies without flinching. Dominic catches her eye, giving a subtle nod of appreciation. Briggs notices the exchange. You two do know each other. Never met her, Dominic repeats. But I appreciate citizens who know their rights. Reynolds pulls Briggs aside, suspicion growing. Something's off here. This guy's too calm. So, Briggs challenges, let him play it cool in a holding cell. I'm telling you, Reynolds insists, normal people panic. This guy acts like he's taking notes. 3 blocks away, a motorcade of black government vehicles makes an unexpected U-turn. Attorney General Anthony Taylor strides through Justice Department corridors, his footsteps echoing authority. 2 aides and his chief of staff struggle to match his pace. He speaks rapidly into his phone. Contact MPD command. I want the names of the officers at that location immediately, and get me the mayor. His chief of staff already has the police commissioner on another line. Sir, we have a situation involving the Attorney General's brother. At the scene, a police sergeant pulls up in an unmarked car. He approaches Briggs and Reynolds with a concerned expression, taking in the handcuffed man and the growing crowd. What's the situation here? The sergeant asks, eyeing the spectators with their recording phones. Possible theft, suspicious behavior, Briggs reports confidently. Subject was uncooperative. Dominic speaks up. I was simply shopping, Sergeant. These officers detained me without cause and have refused to state any charges. The sergeant studies Dominic more carefully, noting his composed demeanor and articulate speech. Have you verified his identity? Reynolds nods. Driver's license says Dominic Taylor. Address is in Georgetown. The sergeant's eyes widen slightly. Taylor? Did you run a complete background? System was being slow, Briggs says defensively. The sergeant pulls them aside, speaking in hushed tones. The officers' expressions shift from confidence to uncertainty as they listen. Dominic remains seated on the curb, still handcuffed but watching the officer's body language change. A subtle shift in power ripples through the scene. The woman who was recording approaches the sergeant. Sir, I'd like to provide my contact information as a witness. These officers detained this man without probable cause. More patrol cars arrive, parking at a distance. The crowd continues to grow, now including several well-dressed professionals from nearby offices. Briggs returns to Dominic, his demeanor noticeably different. Stand up, please. Dominic rises smoothly despite the handcuffs. Am I being charged, Officer Briggs? Briggs blinks at the use of his name. We're still investigating. Investigating what exactly? Dominic presses. The sergeant interjects. Sir, there seems to have been a misunderstanding. The sergeant's radio crackles with a message that drains the color from his face. The sergeant's radio crackles repeatedly. He steps away to answer, his face growing increasingly concerned with each exchange. Meanwhile, 3 black SUVs with government plates turn onto the street, moving with purpose. Their tinted windows reflect the afternoon sun, concealing the occupants. Reynolds notices first. Sarge, we've got company. The sergeant returns, now visibly nervous. Uncuff him, now. But the investigation, Briggs begins. There is no investigation, the sergeant snaps. Uncuff him and return his belongings. All of them. As Reynolds reluctantly removes the handcuffs, Dominic rubs his wrists, red marks visible where the cuffs dug into his skin. "My watch?" Dominic asks calmly. "Platinum Rolex. It was in my pocket." Briggs and Reynolds exchange panicked glances. "Check the patrol car," the sergeant orders. The crowd has grown to nearly 50 people. Someone starts a slow clap as Dominic is released, the sound spreading like ripples in water. The black SUVs park nearby. Men in suits with earpieces emerge, scanning the scene with professional efficiency. The sergeant approaches Dominic. "Sir, I want to personally apologize for this incident." Dominic accepts his belongings one by one, checking each item methodically. "The apology should come from the officers who detained me without cause, Sergeant." Briggs and Reynolds stand awkwardly to the side, avoiding eye contact. The power dynamic has completely reversed. "And my phone?" Dominic asks. The woman who had been recording steps forward. "I have it, sir. I picked it up when it fell." She hands it to Dominic, who nods appreciatively. "Thank you for your civic engagement today." Dominic turns to the officers. "I'd like your business cards, please, for my records." Reynolds hesitates but provides his card. Briggs reluctantly does the same, his fingers trembling slightly. The sergeant interjects. "Sir, if there's anything else we can do—" "There is," Dominic interrupts. "You can explain why I was profiled and detained while shopping in my own neighborhood." The men in suits form a protective perimeter as the most important car in the motorcade approaches. The men in suits form a perimeter, keeping the crowd at a respectful distance. One approaches Dominic directly. "Mr. Taylor, are you all right?" he asks. "I'm fine, Agent Cooper," Dominic replies, straightening his shirt. Officer Briggs pales. "You know these feds?" Dominic ignores him, addressing the sergeant instead. "I'd like to file a formal complaint for unlawful detention and potential civil rights violations." The sergeant swallows hard. "Of course, sir. We can handle that at the station." "I think we're beyond that point," Dominic says calmly. A black limousine with American flags on the front fenders turns onto the street, followed by two more SUVs. The crowd murmurs with recognition. Phones raise higher, capturing what has evolved from a street detention into a national moment. The sergeant's radio crackles again. He listens, then turns to Briggs and Reynolds. "Report to headquarters immediately. Administrative leave, effective now." "What?" Briggs protests. "We were just doing our job." "Your job?" Dominic asks. "Was your job to detain a citizen without probable cause? To conduct an illegal search? To ignore a government ID?" Reynolds looks confused. "What government ID?" Dominic reaches into his wallet and removes his Justice Department credentials. "The one you overlooked while searching for evidence of non-existent crimes." The store attendant who called the police shrinks back as cameras turn toward him. His manager appears, frantically trying to assess the situation. The limousine stops. The driver opens the rear door. Attorney General Anthony Taylor emerges, his expression grim but controlled. Officers Briggs and Reynolds freeze in recognition. Their faces reflect the dawning realization of their catastrophic error. The crowd parts as Anthony approaches his brother. News crews have arrived, cameras capturing every moment. "Dominic, are you hurt?" Anthony asks, voice carrying both personal concern and professional authority. "Nothing permanent," Dominic replies, "though my civil rights certainly took a beating." Anthony turns to the sergeant. "I want a full incident report on my desk by morning." The national news helicopters circling overhead mean this isn't just a local incident anymore. Anthony Taylor stands beside his brother, both men radiating quiet authority. News vans line the street, reporters pushing forward with microphones and cameras. The scene has transformed from a street confrontation to a national media event in minutes. "Mr. Attorney General, was your brother targeted?" a reporter calls out. Anthony raises a hand for quiet. My presence here is both personal and professional. What happened today represents exactly the kind of law enforcement overreach my brother has dedicated his career to fighting. Dominic steps forward. I was detained without cause while shopping. My identification was ignored. I was handcuffed and searched without probable cause or consent. Officer Briggs attempts to interject. Sir, we received a call about suspicious activity. From whom? Dominic asks pointedly, looking toward the store attendant who now tries to blend into the background. The Attorney General addresses the gathering crowd. Today, my brother experienced what too many Americans face daily. The difference is that most don't have the Attorney General as their brother. Cameras flash as reporters capture the moment. The story evolves before their eyes, no longer about a detention, but about systemic issues exposed through personal experience. As Chief Counsel for the Civil Rights Division, Dominic continues, I've reviewed hundreds of similar incidents. The pattern is clear and troubling. The revelation sends ripples through the crowd. Bystanders exchange shocked glances, processing the identity of the man they just watched being handcuffed. The officers' faces drain of color as they realize who they've detained. Anthony turns to address the officers directly. This incident will be investigated thoroughly, not because the victim is my brother, but because every American deserves equal protection under the law. The police sergeant attempts damage control. Sir, I assure you this is not departmental policy. Yet it happened, Dominic replies. And the body cameras these officers are wearing should have captured everything. Briggs instinctively touches his camera. Unless, of course, they were deactivated, Dominic adds, watching Briggs' reaction. Briggs shifts uncomfortably, eyes darting to his partner. Reynolds stares at the ground, already calculating how this will affect his career. The young woman who had been recording steps forward. I have continuous footage from the moment the officers approached Mr. Taylor. Several other bystanders raise their phones. We do too! The store owner rushes outside, apologizing profusely. Mr. Taylor, I had no idea. My employee misunderstood. Misunderstood what? Dominic asks. That black men can afford luxury goods? The crowd murmurs in agreement. Social media notifications chime across multiple phones as the story spreads beyond this street corner. Anthony places a hand on his brother's shoulder. This stops today, not just for Dominic Taylor, but for every citizen who has faced similar treatment. He turns to the gathered press. My office will conduct a comprehensive review of detention policies across all law enforcement agencies in the district. A reporter shouts, Is this personal for you, Mr. Attorney General? Of course it's personal, Anthony responds, but more importantly, it's professional. When law enforcement acts on bias rather than evidence, they undermine the very system they're sworn to uphold. Dominic addresses the crowd. What happened today happens to people without cameras, without witnesses, without connections. Those stories rarely make headlines. The police chief arrives, approaching the Taylor brothers with visible apprehension. He adjusts his uniform nervously before speaking. Mr. Attorney General, Chief Counsel Taylor, he acknowledges both men. I want to personally assure you that a full investigation will be conducted. With what outcome? Dominic asks. A finding of no policy violation like so many others? The chief falters. The department takes these matters seriously. We'll see, Anthony interrupts, because this time, the entire nation is watching. Bystanders press closer, eager to witness this rare moment of accountability. The woman who recorded the incident steps forward again. Mr. Taylor, I'm sending you the footage. What these officers did, I've seen it happen before, but never with consequences. Dominic nods. That changes today. The store manager approaches tentatively. Mr. Taylor, please accept our deepest apologies. The employee who called security has been suspended pending investigation. This isn't about one employee, Dominic responds. It's about a culture that views black customers with suspicion. The manager's face reddens. I assure you, our company doesn't... Save it for the deposition, Anthony interjects. News crews jostle for position as the story grows. A national network reporter pushes forward. Attorney General Taylor, will this incident affect Justice Department policy? It already has, Anthony responds. What you're witnessing is the birth of a national initiative on biased policing. Officers Briggs and Reynolds watch their careers implode in real time. Briggs leans toward his partner. "We're screwed," he whispers. Reynolds doesn't respond, his eyes fixed on the ground. The crowd continues to grow as word spreads through the neighborhood. A group of young black professionals arrives, having heard about the incident through social media. "This happens to us all the time," one tells a reporter. "But without cameras or the Attorney General as your brother, who believes you?" Have you ever witnessed someone abuse their authority? How did it end? As the Taylor brothers depart, Officer Briggs realizes his career just crashed because of 20 minutes of bias. 1 week later, police headquarters. Internal affairs investigators interview Officers Briggs and Reynolds separately in sterile, windowless rooms. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Briggs's face as he shifts uncomfortably in the metal chair. "Officer Briggs, can you explain why you initiated contact with Mr. Taylor?" an investigator asks, recording device capturing every word. Briggs shifts uncomfortably in his chair. "We received a call about suspicious activity. The store confirms the silent alarm was triggered because Mr. Taylor looked out of place. What made you continue the detention after verifying his purchase?" Briggs stares at the table. "He was uncooperative." "The body camera footage shows otherwise," the investigator counters. "In fact, it shows Mr. Taylor remaining calm while you escalated the situation." "Look, we get these calls all day," Briggs says defensively. "You try sorting out the real threats from the nothing calls." "Is that what this was? A nothing call?" The investigator slides photographs across the table, screenshots from the body camera footage. "We acted on the information we had," Briggs insists, "including Mr. Taylor's government ID that you ignored." The investigator taps a close-up of the wallet. In another room, Reynolds faces similar questioning, sweat beading on his forehead. "Why didn't you intervene when your partner violated department policy?" the investigator asks. Reynolds looks away. "I thought Briggs had reason to suspect something." "Based on what evidence?" Reynolds has no answer. "Officer Reynolds, the department policy clearly states that officers must articulate specific behaviors that constitute reasonable suspicion. What specific behaviors did Mr. Taylor exhibit?" Reynolds stares at his hands. "He seemed out of place." "Being black in an upscale store constitutes out of place?" The investigator's voice remains neutral, but the question lands like a hammer. Meanwhile, at the boutique's corporate headquarters, executives hold an emergency meeting. Charts showing plummeting sales figures dominate the wall screens. The red downward trend lines mirror the faces of the executives. "The Taylor incident has gone viral," the PR director explains, swiping through slides of social media outrage. "We're facing boycott threats, and the Justice Department has opened an inquiry into our company's practices." The CEO slams his fist on the table. "Fire the employee immediately." "That won't be enough," the legal counsel warns, reviewing documents. "The Attorney General is making an example of this case. We've received formal notice of an investigation into discriminatory practices across all our locations." "How bad is the financial impact?" asks the CFO. The PR director grimaces. "We've lost 20% of our market value since the incident. Celebrity customers are canceling orders and posting about it. The #boycott Luxco hashtag is trending nationally." "Jesus," the CEO mutters. "All because one employee got nervous around a black customer?" "No," the legal counsel corrects. "All because our company fostered an environment where that reaction was normalized." The Justice Department subpoena specifically asks for all employee training materials and incident reports for the past 5 years. "What do they expect to find?" the CEO demands. The legal counsel sighs. "A pattern, and based on my preliminary review, they'll find one." At the Justice Department, Dominic meets with civil rights attorneys. Footage from body cameras and bystanders plays on a large screen. The room falls silent as they watch Dominic being handcuffed. The detention was clearly unlawful, Dominic states, pointing to specific moments. We're filing both departmental complaints and civil actions against the officers and the store. Anthony enters, reviewing the evidence. The mayor called again. They're offering settlements and policy revisions. Not enough, Dominic responds firmly. This needs to set precedent. What are you looking for? Asks one of the attorneys. Systemic change, Dominic answers. Individual settlements get buried. Public consent decrees create lasting reform. The team nods in agreement. This is no longer about one incident, but about transforming law enforcement practices nationwide. 2 weeks later, the boutique releases a public statement. The CEO appears uncomfortable before cameras, reading from a prepared statement. We announce mandatory bias training for all employees and a $2 million donation to initiatives addressing racial profiling in retail. We acknowledge our failure and commit to becoming part of the solution. Behind the scenes, internal memos reveal panic. The Taylor incident threatens our entire East Coast expansion, one executive writes. Fix this before our stock drops further. In an emergency board meeting, the reality becomes clear. We're losing luxury clients who don't want to be associated with a discriminatory brand, the marketing director explains. And we're losing non-white customers who don't feel welcome in our stores. So we're alienating everyone? A board member asks incredulously. Pretty much, confirms the marketing director. The police department issues a public apology in a hastily arranged press conference. Reporters pack the room, sensing blood in the water. We are implementing new protocols for suspicious person calls, the chief announces. Officers will now require articulation of specific behaviors rather than subjective impressions. A reporter raises her hand. Will Officers Briggs and Reynolds face criminal charges? The investigation is ongoing, the chief hedges. Has the department reached out to previous victims of similar detentions? Asks another reporter. The chief's discomfort grows visible. We're reviewing past incidents. Dominic watches the press conference on his office television, taking notes. They're scrambling, his assistant observes. Good, Dominic responds. Discomfort drives change. Officers Briggs and Reynolds face disciplinary hearings. The police union president approaches Dominic outside the proceedings. Look, mistakes were made, he begins, but destroying these officers' careers won't fix the system. Dominic's response is measured but firm. Neither will protecting officers who abuse their authority. We're talking about 2 careers, 2 families, the union president presses. I'm talking about systemic injustice affecting millions, Dominic counters. Weigh those scales. The disciplinary board reviews the evidence in a closed session. The chairperson reads through the extensive case file. Officer Briggs has 3 previous complaints for excessive force against minority suspects, one board member notes. All ruled unfounded, the union representative points out. Because there was no video evidence, another board member counters. Now we have video. Briggs, with previous complaints in his record, receives termination papers. Reynolds receives suspension without pay and mandatory retraining. The store attendant who triggered the incident gives a tearful interview on local news. I never meant to profile anyone, he claims, wiping away tears. I've learned how my unconscious bias affected my actions. Social media tears his apology apart, with users posting screenshots of his now deleted racist posts. This isn't about one bad employee or 2 bad officers, a civil rights activist explains on a cable news panel. It's about systems that enable and protect biased actions. 3 weeks later, Dominic appears on national news programs, using his experience to highlight broader issues. What happened to me happens daily across America, he explains to millions of viewers. The difference is that most victims don't have the resources or platform to seek justice. The host asks, has anything meaningful changed since your incident? Change begins with accountability, Dominic responds. We've seen initial steps, but the real test is whether these reforms last beyond the news cycle. In Washington's power corridors, the Taylor incident becomes a case study. Congressional hearings on police reform reference it repeatedly. When even the Attorney General's brother isn't safe from biased policing, one representative states, how can any citizen feel protected? The boutique's parent company faces unexpected consequences. Their insurance company raises premiums, citing demonstrated risk of discriminatory practices. Internal emails reveal executive panic. The Taylor incident is costing us millions beyond the settlement. We need a complete overhaul of customer service protocols. A month after the incident, Dominic meets with police academy leaders. Your cadets need to understand that split-second bias can destroy careers and lives, he tells them. Every detention should be based on facts, not feelings. The academy director nods. We're revising our entire training curriculum based on what happened. Anthony handles the political dimensions, meeting with the president. This incident has catalyzed reform efforts, the president acknowledges. But sustaining momentum requires continued pressure. Which is exactly why we're pursuing both the criminal and civil cases, Anthony responds. The system changes when consequences become unavoidable. The boutique implements new customer service protocols. Every employee wears a body camera. Signs in dressing rooms inform customers of their rights. Excessive, the CEO complains privately, but cheaper than another lawsuit. While corporations and departments scramble to reform, former Officer Briggs plans his counterattack through media channels. Former Officer Briggs sits before the police review board, defiant despite his termination. The room feels overly bright, every eye scrutinizing his posture and expressions. I was following procedure, he insists, voice rising. Taylor was uncooperative. The chairperson plays the body camera footage on the wall screen, stopping at key moments. The video contradicts Briggs's account with damning clarity. At what point was Mr. Taylor uncooperative? The chairperson asks. He stated clearly he was reaching for identification. He remained calm throughout. Briggs shifts uncomfortably, tie suddenly too tight. It was his attitude. His attitude of knowing his rights? The chairperson asks pointedly. The footage continues, showing Briggs tightening the handcuffs unnecessarily and ignoring Dominic's government ID. Your termination stands, the chairperson announces after brief deliberation. Furthermore, the board recommends your police certification be revoked. Briggs stands abruptly. 20 years on the force, ended because of politics. No, the chairperson corrects. Ended because of documented misconduct. Meanwhile, the store employee faces his own consequences. The boutique has fired him, and he struggles to find new employment as his face has become recognizable from news coverage. I can't even get interviews, he tells his unemployment counselor. Everyone recognizes me as that guy from the Taylor incident. Actions have consequences, the counselor responds, without sympathy. In civil court, Dominic sits calmly as his attorney presents the case against both the police department and the boutique. The courtroom gallery overflows with spectators and media. My client seeks policy changes, not just monetary damages, the attorney explains. This case represents a pattern that must be addressed systemically. The judge reviews the evidence, including testimony from other minority shoppers who experienced similar treatment at the boutique. The court finds clear evidence of discriminatory practices, the judge announces after 3 days of testimony. Remedies will include both monetary damages and mandated procedural changes. The police department agrees to an independent review of all detention practices and implements new training protocols focused on unconscious bias and proper detention procedures. The boutique's parent company faces shareholder pressure. At their quarterly meeting, angry investors demand accountability. This incident has cost us millions in both settlement and lost revenue, the CEO admits, displaying declining sales figures. We've implemented comprehensive reforms in all our locations. Former Officer Briggs gives a bitter interview to a small right-wing outlet. I was just doing my job. Now my career is over because of politics. The interviewer pushes back unexpectedly. But the body camera footage clearly shows you violated department policy and potentially federal law. Briggs has no response. Later that evening, Briggs sits alone in his apartment, scrolling through job listings. Security guard positions, mall cop openings, nothing that matches his former status or salary. His phone buzzes with a text from Reynolds. Settlement approved. Signed my NDA today. Briggs throws his phone across the room. No settlement offer came his way, his actions deemed too egregious for negotiation. The next morning, Briggs finds 3 news vans parked outside his apartment building. His police union attorney calls. Stop talking to the media, the attorney warns. You're making things worse. They ruined my life over nothing, Briggs complains. The footage shows otherwise, the attorney responds bluntly, and every interview you give becomes evidence in the civil case. 6 months after losing everything, Briggs faces an unexpected visitor, Dominic Taylor. Attorney General Anthony Taylor stands at a podium, flanked by his brother Dominic and representatives from major retail associations and police organizations. The Justice Department's Great Hall buzzes with anticipation as cameras flash. Today, we announce the Equitable Enforcement Initiative, Anthony states, voice carrying throughout the room. This comprehensive program will transform how law enforcement and retail security interact with the public. Dominic steps forward. What began as a personal injustice has evolved into an opportunity for meaningful change. The initiative includes 4 major components displayed on screens behind them. New federal guidelines for suspicious person reports, requiring specific articulable behaviors rather than subjective impressions. A national database tracking detention outcomes by demographic factors, federal grants for police departments implementing bias reduction programs, retail industry standards for customer service regardless of perceived socioeconomic status. In retail stores across the country, new training videos feature Dominic's experience as a case study. Employees watch attentively as the scenario unfolds on screen. The customer's appearance should never determine the quality of service or level of suspicion, the training narrator explains. Assess behaviors, not characteristics. Police academies incorporate the case into their curriculum. A training officer tells cadets, "This is how quickly you can destroy your career and violate someone's rights when you let bias drive your actions." Former Officer Reynolds, now working in community relations after his suspension, speaks to a rookie class. His humility feels genuine, hard-earned through public humiliation. "I failed to intervene when my partner crossed the line," he admits. "That makes me equally responsible." Dominic visits police departments nationwide, not as an antagonist, but as a partner in reform. He stands before officers in Chicago, addressing their concerns directly. Law enforcement is essential, he tells them, but it must be applied equally and justly to maintain public trust. The boutique that triggered the incident has transformed its approach, becoming an industry leader in inclusive customer service. Their new CEO, a black woman with experience in both retail and civil rights, appears on business magazines. "We've turned a painful incident into a template for change," she explains. "Our customer satisfaction metrics have actually improved since implementing bias-free policies." At a retail industry conference, executives discuss the financial impact of discriminatory practices. The Taylor incident cost one company over $12 million when all factors were calculated, a risk management specialist explains. Bias isn't just wrong, it's expensive. Anthony and Dominic review the initiative's 6-month progress in the Attorney General's office. Detentions without arrests have dropped 17% nationwide, an analyst reports. The demographic disparities are narrowing. It's a start, Dominic acknowledges, but sustainability requires constant vigilance. As reforms take root publicly, powerful interests work behind the scenes to undermine the initiative. 1 year later. Dominic enters the boutique where the incident occurred. The store has been redesigned with a more welcoming atmosphere. Gone are the security guards hovering near expensive merchandise, replaced by attentive staff who greet all customers warmly. A new manager approaches. "Mr. Taylor, it's an honor. Your case changed everything about how we operate." Dominic nods, browsing comfortably. Other customers of various backgrounds shop without the hovering presence of security. The tension that once permeated the space has dissipated. "Our staff undergoes quarterly training now," the manager explains, walking alongside Dominic. "And our customer satisfaction scores have actually improved across all demographics." Dominic purchases another pair of shoes, the transaction smooth and respectful. The receipt includes the store's new customer pledge. Equal service, every customer, every time. Outside, he passes a police officer on patrol, a young woman who recognizes him and nods respectfully. "Mr. Taylor, the reforms you helped implement have made our job clearer," she tells him. "Knowing exactly what constitutes reasonable suspicion protects everyone, including officers." Dominic continues to his office at the Justice Department, where data from the new tracking system displays on screens. Analysts compare trends, searching for patterns and improvements. "Detentions without arrest are down 30%, an analyst reports, and the racial disparity in those numbers has narrowed significantly." Anthony visits his brother's office, knocking briefly before entering. "The president called. The Equitable Enforcement Initiative is going national." Dominic smiles. "It was never about me. It was about using what happened to create lasting change." Later, Dominic speaks at a law school graduation. Hundreds of future attorneys listen attentively as he addresses them from the podium. "The law is powerful, but only when applied equally," he tells them. "Your responsibility as attorneys is to ensure that equality." He recounts his experience briefly. "When those handcuffs went on, I had a choice to react with anger or to respond with purpose. Choose purpose over reaction, and you can transform individual injustice into systemic improvement." The camera pulls back to show the audience diverse faces of future legal professionals absorbing his words. Among them sits former Officer Reynolds, now a law student himself. "Justice isn't just an outcome in court," Dominic concludes. "It's a daily practice in how we treat each other on the streets, in stores, and in every interaction." In a small apartment across town, former Officer Briggs watches the graduation speech on television. His expression reveals complex emotions, resentment mixed with dawning understanding. On his table lies an application for a community relations position. Back at the Justice Department, Anthony and Dominic review new legislation inspired by their initiative. "This will outlast both our careers," Anthony notes with satisfaction. "That's the point," Dominic responds. "Systems outlive individuals. We had to change the system." The brothers walk through the Justice Department halls, their conversation turning personal. "You know," Anthony says, "sometimes I wonder what would have happened if you weren't who you are." "I think about that every day," Dominic replies. "And that's why this work matters. Would you have kept your cool like Dominic did? Or would you have reacted differently?" If you believe in accountability and want to see more stories that expose injustice and celebrate those fighting for change, hit that like button now. It only takes a second, but it tells us you value these important conversations. Subscribe to Beat Stories for more powerful narratives that challenge the status quo. We post new content every Wednesday and Sunday, stories that don't just entertain, but enlighten and empower. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss a new Beat Story. Join our community of over 2 million viewers who refuse to accept injustice as normal.
This story shouldn't be the exception. It should be the last time it ever happens. At Beat Stories, we turn one moment of injustice into a call for change. Subscribe to help make that call louder and longer lasting.